Hey, what's up and welcome back to the channel, everyone. It is me and I am back behind the camera. Normally, well, actually for the past month, I've been doing everything live. So it is good to be back behind the camera, get my sea legs back. Let's get some editing in and done. And we are gonna talk about the Delta Medallion Program changes and exactly what it is that I think about that. But before we get into that, I hope you guys didn't forget that this isn't a one-man show, so here's my co-star.
Welcome back to my dad's channel. If you're new here, make sure to click that like button and subscribe, and don't forget to share.
So it's no secret that I've always been a Delta fanboy since I started. Well, maybe not a fanboy, but at least a loyalist, because it's predominantly who I use for my travel. And the Delta Medallion Program has actually been very useful for me. I have had numerous upgrades that I've even posted on the channel. So now, what is it? What is going on with Delta? Delta has been in the news and has gotten a lot of negative press for a lot of the knee-jerk reactions that came from very jarring changes that they've made. Now, the program, which used to encompass medallion qualifying miles, in addition to medallion qualifying segments, MQMs and MQSs, respectively, and in addition to that, medallion qualifying dollars, or MQDs. Now, in order to get status before, you needed to either satisfy an MQM requirement or an MQS requirement in combination with an MQD requirement. We'll just throw out random numbers here. So $2,500 or $3,000 for silver plus 25,000 MQMs, meaning that you had to either, or you do 15 segments, okay? These are just random numbers. So you would either need 15 segments and $3,000 worth of spend, or 25,000 miles flown in Delta planes, because you couldn't buy MQMs, plus the MQD requirement. Well, Delta is going to a purely MQD format, but the problem is that the MQD requirements for each tier of service have actually risen quite a bit. Thereby, without some sort of help, it is much more expensive to get Delta status than it is the other legacy carriers. So it's general things that Delta has done in order to basically get people to accept this. And it is because you're gonna have to accept it, because they're gonna do what they're gonna do anyway. They're a multi-billion-dollar corporation. Unfortunately, we are the consumers. They have their foot on the wheel, on the gas. So they're just gonna make the ride as smooth as possible. So now with this, because MQMs and MQSs are going away and MQDs are coming in, people have to really reevaluate their strategies with the Delta program. How much are you willing to spend? How can you possibly subsidize said spend in order to get the status? I myself, I've been silver, I've been medallion silver, medallion gold, and they're very valuable because with the Delta status, upgrades are very quick, they're very efficient, and what they say on the website, it actually happens. So if you are in line for an upgrade, if you look around, that board is updated in real time and it works. So now with the MQD requirements, Delta at the end of this month, February 2024, according to their site, they will actually be giving people who had rollover MQMs a chance to convert those into MQDs. Now, originally they wanted to do it at a rate of 20 MQMs for one MQD, but they have since walked that back, and now the ratio is 10-1. So if you have some overflow, you can actually use that in order to qualify for status for this year. Now, mind you, the status year goes from January 1st to December 31st, and the status that you have actually extends the full month of January in the following year. So if you have status for 2024, it will go from January 1st to January 31st of 2025, even though you are fully in the next qualifying year. So you get to enjoy 1 month of the status as you build towards the next one. Now also, if you don't want to convert your old MQMs into MQDs for status and you just want to take free flights, the best part about it is Delta has also said that when the conversion begins, your extra rollover MQMs can actually be converted to regular redeemable SkyMiles at a rate of 2 for 1. So every 2 MQMs will give you 1 SkyMile. It's a much better rate, but it won't help you with, it won't really help you per se with status, but still, that could be valuable if you just want to take some free flights and you got a ton of miles. Now, speaking of a ton of miles, you have people out there who are million milers, and that pretty much goes for all the legacy carriers because Flying 1,000,000 miles it's significant. Think about it. The circumference of the Earth is between 25 and 26,000 miles. So in order to say that you've flown 1,000,000 miles, that is nothing to sneeze at, and that takes loyalty. And what Delta has done with their program is they have decided to reward that loyalty significantly, if you ask me. Because now all the 1,000,000 mile statuses have all been upgraded, and for the first time ever, Delta 360 status, the invite-only status that people, the Uber Delta loyalists are chasing, can now be had by simply traveling 5 million miles on Delta. Now, that's wild stuff. Will that cause some dilution? Maybe, maybe not. Who knows? But the fact of the matter is, I'm nowhere near that. I think I have like 100,000 miles. But 5 million miles and you get Delta 360, you get Porsche transfers on the tarmac, you get all the perks that come with invite-only status. That is nothing to sneeze at. Now, Delta 360 status is actually applied at 6 million miles. It is first applied at 5 million miles. Now, below that, at 4 and 3 million miles, you actually get lifetime diamond status. And at 2 million miles, you get lifetime platinum, and at 1 million miles, you get lifetime gold. Now, the old system had you at 1 million for lifetime silver, 2 and 3 million for lifetime gold, 4 million for lifetime platinum, 5 million for lifetime platinum as well, and 6 million for lifetime diamond. Now, in addition to that, your 1,000,000 mile status has actually now moved up in the hierarchy of requirements that determine who gets upgrades. It is now third in line behind medallion status. So there are 8 categories, and they're all listed on Delta's website as to how it is they determine who gets upgrades. I'm just letting you know that 1,000,000 mile status, in order to reward loyalty, has now moved up higher in the pecking order. Now, in addition to that, there are new choice benefits, but I won't go into those because they won't be in effect until October, so that could change. Even though they have given previews, I'll let you guys go ahead and look into that on the website on your own. Now, the finalized thresholds in order to get status in the program as it is now is 5,000 MQDs for silver, 10,000 MQDs for gold, 15,000 MQDs for platinum, and 28,000 MQDs for diamond. Now, all of these are up drastically from the old standard, but that is what they want you to have. Medallion qualifying dollars. That means they want you to spend. How you fly at this point is immaterial. They just want to know that you are spending. So now those are pretty much the broad strokes of the program itself. Okay, so now let's get into some specifics. So now I hold a Delta Blue card. Their whole Delta line of cards has been, well, not the whole thing, but most of them have been revamped. We do have some annual fee raises of $100 for the Platinum, both business and consumer, and $100 fee raise for the Reserve, both business and consumer. The Gold card, both business and consumer, both got $50 increases, but they are still waiving annual fee in the first year for both of them. The Blue is still no annual fee, and that's only on the consumer side. Now, with that considered, the Platinum card has always pretty much been the sweet spot of the credit card collections that Delta offers. Now, my reviews and thoughts on the Platinum card have been some of the most popular videos on my channel, but now I get to update them. Now, with the Platinum card, it has gotten some enhanced features, and that's the one I'm going to focus on to let you know exactly how it is that they did compromise in order to make the program changes even better, or at least not so bad for people who are loyal enough to hold a Delta Amex card. Now, first and foremost, the Platinum card was, and now still definitely is, pound for pound, the best airline card on the market. It is what it is. You can say what you want about the value of Delta SkyMiles or Sky Pesos or whatever it is that you want to refer to them as, but in order to generate them, if you simply want to generate them outside of convertible currency, this is the card to have. It has 3x multiplier on Delta purchases, 2x at restaurants, 2x on groceries. Yes, you heard that right. A airline card with a grocery category, 3x on hotel bookings, and in addition to that, 1x on all else purchases. What also remains is the 15% off when you're booking with points as long as you're a Platinum holder. And then in addition to that, you still get your global entry and TSA PreCheck. Now here's where it gets good. As new enhanced benefits come out, you get a Delta Stays $150 credit if you book a prepaid hotel through Delta Stays or a prepaid vacation. So it's just a straight credit. Now, in addition to that, they are now offering a $120 rideshare credit. Now, also, this is still Amex, so of course you don't get the 120 bucks, you get $10 a month, but instead of just being used on Uber, which the gold and platinum consumer cards are notorious for, this rideshare credit is actually fairly broad and includes other providers like Lyft, Revel, which is one of my absolute favorites. I use it in New York all the time. And if you're in the greater New York area, you will recognize Revel as the all blue fleet of Teslas. They're all Teslas with salary drivers, so they all make a living wage. And in addition to that, there's Curb, and there are others. But now you have those choices that you can actually apply that $10 credit. It goes month to month, and I do not believe they stack. Next up, you got a $120 Resi credit. Now, everyone knows Amex owns Resi. Resi is like a booking program for restaurants and has a list of approved restaurants with Amex. But if you use your card at a Resi restaurant, once again, it's $10 a month. And each month, if you eat at one of those restaurants, you will get a $10 credit. Now, also, as an aside, make sure you enroll at Resi, create a profile, and you can list your card there. And also for the rideshare credit, you will have to enroll for that credit. So now we're getting to the good stuff. And we now have the MQD boost. What is that? Because now we don't deal with MQMs and MQSs anymore, the MQD boost states that for every $20 that you spend on your Delta SkyMiles Platinum card, you get 1 MQD. So how this makes this significant is that before you had to spend $25,000 to get an MQD waiver, and in some cases you would get 10,000 MQMs. It was enough to kind of get you there, but it required crazy spend. Don't get me wrong, this requires a lot of spend too, but at $20, you get 1 MQD. You know, you run a sub at $4,000, and I'll let you guys do the math, how you can actually get MQDs without actually having to fly the airline. Believe me, with the Platinum and the Reserve, it still takes stratospheric spend in order to get to the higher echelons of status, but this is still something that's a little bit easier than how they had it set up last time. And last but not least, you get something that I think is great, and that is the MQD Head Start. Now, what is that? That means that if you have the Delta Platinum SkyMiles card, be it consumer or business, or the Reserve card, be it consumer or business, they will actually give you 2,500 MQDs to help you with status. Hold one card and pay a $100 increase, and now you have instantly got $2,500 worth of value. So these cards literally pay for themselves even though they had fee increases. So that is significant because that puts you halfway to silver status at the beginning of every single medallion qualifying year. So now you only have to do half the work. So here's the thing that you need to know, and that is they actually also revamped the companion pass. Now, the companion ticket for the Platinum card and the Reserve card has been their bread and butter for recouping value for people like us, period, point blank, bar none. Like I said, one of my most popular videos. But what they've done with that companion pass is actually included the entire United States, not just the lower 48. That includes Hawaii, that includes Alaska, and the Caribbean, and Central America. This is big because if you go on and you read the benefits, I'm not going to list all the countries here, but you can actually, as long as you originate from wherever you originate, you can actually do a round trip, and this is including international travel. So now the taxes before, the maximum taxes you would pay would be $75. You can only originate from the lower 48 to another part of the lower 48 unless you lived in Puerto Rico, Alaska, or Hawaii. So those three areas would get the biggest value. But now with the whole country open, the maximum taxes you will actually pay is $80 up from $75. And if you choose an international destination, the maximum taxes you will pay will be $250. So you know what that means. All my East Coast people, it's time to go to Hawaii or Alaska or, well, just anywhere, or Mexico. You know what I mean? You can definitely start maximizing the value of these cards. Another thing that the Platinum card has now got was Hertz 5-star status. So if you are a platinum card holder, you now have status at Hertz. Now that pretty much wraps up the platinum consumer card. Now all of the same things transfer over to the business card except for one thing. The multipliers on the business card are different. You still get the 3x delta, but you don't get the grocery multiplier. And another thing that you really need to know is that the platinum delta card is actually emulating the business platinum card, whereas you get 1.5 points for purchases over $5,000. One-time purchases over $5,000 instead of the 1x that you would get in the all else category. And you also get now 1.5x for transit, including rideshare, and shipping services when you use the business platinum. Now moving on to the reserve card. And the reason I'm focusing on these two is because they're your top tier cards. They're going to give you the most bang for your buck. They're going to give you the most value. Now, the gold card is a great thing for people who want to have status light and they've maintained that, but I'll let you look into that. But for the reserve card, obviously, the multipliers have remained the same. They still suck at 3x for Delta purchases and 1x for everything else. That's just it. It's a spender's card. But with the additional perks and credits, they've actually sweetened that as well. Now, with the companion ticket, it's the same as the platinum card, only this includes main cabin, comfort plus, all the way up to first class. Now, there's a question of whether Delta One would be included, but the fact is you will get first class originating from a US location. So since first class is included in some Hawaii trips, which is differentiated from Delta One, we'll have to see how that works in. And either way, once you do that, there's something that you need to understand with the Reserves Companion Pass is that the Companion Pass for first class is only available if the proper fare classes in main cabin are available on that plane. Now, what does that mean? That means that for any of these Companion Passes to work, the fares that you need to use are L, and you'll see the little letters when you book, but they are L, U, T, X, and V. Those are your main cabin classes that are applicable to companion passes. Now, with that, when you go forward, your comfort plus fare classes are W and S, and your applicable first class fare classes are I and Z. Now, let me remind you that all of these classes, even the comfort plus and the first class, they're all dependent on main cabin availability. So that pretty much limits you to certain routes and planes, but either way, you can still do the buy one, get one, as long as the core main class fare classes are available on that flight. Now, improvements that the Reserve further has over the Platinum is that your MQD boost, instead of $20 per every MQD of spend, you now only have to spend $10 on the card and you'll get MQDs, which makes it a little easier to quote unquote purchase status. It still requires a significant amount of spend, but you know, if you got it, you got it. The Resi credit is $20 a month, up from $10 for a total of $240, and it works exactly the same way as the Platinum one does. The rideshare credit is actually the same between both cards. The Delta Stays credit is increased by $50 to $200 a year, that's your credit if you do prepaid hotel bookings through Delta Stays or prepaid vacations through Delta Stays. Now, the other thing with the Reserve card, you get 4 annual guest passes to bring people into Delta Sky Club, not the Centurion Lounge. The Reserve also maintains its Centurion Lounge access, which is the only card except for the Black card and the Platinum card, which does so, but that is also contingent on the purchase of a Delta fare with the Reserve card. That's how you get into the Centurion with the Reserve. You got to be flying Delta. You had to have paid for it with your Reserve card. Now, also, because they've limited lounge access, the Reserve card actually gets you 15 annual visits to the Delta Sky Club, which is more than the 10 that they will be assigning to the Amex Platinum and Amex Platinum Business. So with all this considered, what are the pros and cons of this? Now, there have been major changes. These changes have absolutely been sweeping, and I know people will be talking about them. So let's start listing some pros. First things first, the Companion Pass being expanded to the entire United States, plus the Caribbean, plus Central America. Notice I did not just say Mexico, but I mean Central America. That means Mexico all the way down to Panama. This is huge. because now people who before could not get a lot of value, in other words, people in middle America who either could go to your majors like New York or Atlanta or Miami or Boston, now they have a whole list of flights that are now open to them where they can extract way more value from the cards. Plus they have all the way down to almost South America. That is absolutely crazy. I think them expanding that companion pass was big, especially since that was the way people recoup their value for the card anyway. That's what we prepaid for. Now, speaking of prepaying, I given you a pro, here's a con. The fact is, yes, the annual fees went up, but you only have $100 extra, and just in the MQD Head Start alone, $100 is buying you $2,500 worth of value. Now, I am not the sharpest tool in the shed, but I know math. 100, 2,500. 100, 2,500. I mean, I don't know how else I can say it to you, but that in and of itself, these cards literally pay for themselves if you are a Delta loyalist. So it's a con, but I'm explaining to you why it's not as big of a con as most people think. So now another pro is that this shows that Delta and Amex have gotten together and they've decided that even though they want to be a spender's company, obviously Amex is upscale and Delta wants to move in that way. They still want to make compromises for working people so that they can compete and get status. This much I can respect. I do believe that this was done in good faith. I don't see, even though the changes were heavy-handed, they've walked some things back. They haven't made it absolutely easy like American Airlines, whose program is, even though their requirements are much higher, there's like so many ways you can get American Airline points. They haven't made it super easy to that point, but they literally have kind of taken their foot off your neck a little bit. So now here's another con with that. With lounge access. Lounge access being limited, it kind of stings in a way, because now the Platinum card, which you used to have paid entry into the lounges, no longer has Delta Sky Club access. And even the Reserve card, it now has limited access as well, but you still have access. So that's something to think about. But with just those examples listed, I really kind of feel like I still think these changes are a good thing. So, pro tips. Let's get to the pro tips. We already know that we're going to churn. We already know we're going to optimize. But what is a pro tip? The MQD head starts that are available on the Platinum Consumer, Platinum Business, Reserve Consumer, Reserve Business are stackable. What does that mean? Okay, you have people who have the Platinum card and the Reserve card. As a matter of fact, shout out to a commenter on my page. She is a pediatrician. She actually commented on one of my lives with my daughter in it, and she has the Platinum and the Reserve. So with that, with those two cards and the two $2,500 head starts, boom, you have perpetual silver status every single year by paying $1,000 in fees. So now before you clutch your pearls at $1,000 in fees, understand people have the Amex trifecta that they're not even using right, can barely afford, and they're paying almost $1,000 in fees. At least with this, you get airline status. You essentially can buy status by simply having multiple cards. Now, if you're a total madman and you have the Platinum Consumer and Business and the Reserve Consumer and Business, with those four cards spending $2,000 a year, you have perpetual gold status every single year. You have not even sat on a plane. Now, mind you, most people who have that do fly Delta frequently, and that is even better because as you fly and as you spend, that will rocket you up and keep you in status and keep you in competition at all given times. So that is crazy. Just that benefit alone, these cards pay for themselves immediately. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Yeah, $350 for one, $650 for the other, but this is one case where it's good to get what you're paying for. Another thing, when you use a companion pass, and this is what I've preached, find the most expensive fare with the proper fare class that you can get your hands on. I would love to fly from Palm Beach to Honolulu. It's gonna cost some money, but if I can get one ticket, and because it's domestic, even though it's over 6,000 miles, the most I'm gonna pay for the second ticket is $75. So if I find a $1,200 economy ticket, main cabin in with the Platinum card, and I paid $12.75 for 2 tickets. You get where I'm going here? The card is now paid for itself for 2 years, but you just have to have that initial outlay. Now, if you're a real big time baller shot caller and you want to do that kind of stuff first class, you're talking $4,000 or $5,000 a ticket, and still that card is paying for itself for years in the future. So this is something to think about. Use these tickets to go as far as you would like to go. I have used the companion pass on my Delta Platinum when I had it in order to take my wife to San Francisco, and she used her companion pass on her Platinum, which she still owns, for us to fly from South Florida to Seattle. It's a beautiful thing. These companion passes, they're absolutely powerful. Now, another thing that you need to know, with the companion pass, there is a minimum. You have to be, your round trip has to span 3 days. That's the absolute minimum. And then the maximum is 30 days. So let's say we want to do a round trip and do a week-long Alaska cruise. We can fly up to Juneau or wherever, which is still domestic, although it's a lot of miles flown, that is. We can fly up there, do our week, come back, not a problem. You know what I mean? So they put the minimums and the maximums so people can't quote unquote game the system, but it is what it is. Just want to let you know that, and that's something you ought to consider with your round trip. So if you're just doing a 1 or a 2 day or a weekend, make sure it's at least a 3 day weekend. Now, with all these things considered, there have been some polarizing opinions about the Delta changes. And I mean, to close, look, we got to understand that everyone is not in the same season, and a lot of people who participate in the community and actually make videos, they're in the beginning of their money-making cycle. So sticker shock will actually send a lot of people running to the hills. But if you can actually look beneath the surface and look at some of these benefits with their true maximum potential, you will understand that while Delta has made unfavorable changes to the requirements of the program, they've given you powerful tools in order to help ease the pain. But that is just my opinion. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and it's been great to do another update on the Delta program. So please feel free to check out some other things that I have available here. And also, thank you so much for joining me. And also, please leave comments on there. Tell me what you think about the program. Tell me what you think about the changes. But until next time, I'll catch you later.